This is my second time at this conference. This is such a wonderful conference. Have you guys all been here before? Second time? Me too. This is wonderful. I was here last year as well. I learned so much stuff in the short amount of time that I was here. It was awesome. This is a really cool event. I speak at conferences and events all over the place, and this is one of my favorites. Really, it's such a diverse and eclectic group of people with so much knowledge that they bring to the table. Absolutely fascinating. I really enjoy it. So we're going to talk about growing your farm by saving your seeds. That's the topic of the day. If you have any questions, any specific questions, technical, seed saving, whatever, any questions at all, raise your hand and ask them right away, because I kind of get fast paced and I have a lot to say, and I'll just be a mile down the road in no time. So raise your hand or stand up or yell or whatever it is, and I'll do what I can to answer your question the best I can. I got 2 kids, so I've gotten pretty good at answering all sorts of questions, whether I know the answer or not. So my name is Ben Cohen, and I'm from Small House Farm. If we could maybe dim a light, they could see the slides a little better. But that's the house. Now, I show the house specifically. We call our homestead Small House Farm, and people all the time think I live in a tiny house, and I do not. So I like to show a picture of the house so everybody can see that it's regular, average. It's 1,100 square foot, totally normal, you know what I mean? But I do have 2 young boys, and there are times where that house feels very small. I tell you what. But so now, small house is what I call an effort and sustainable living. We do grow a majority of our own food there. Most of our vegetable production is for personal consumption. When we have an excess of something, a large amount of something, obviously we'll take that to market with the other things that we're already taking to market. But a majority of our vegetable production is, like I said, for personal consumption. I'm working on a water catchment system to collect the gray water that comes out of the home. I'm super stoked about it. I honestly believe it'll increase the value of my home. My wife thinks differently, so we're kind of still going around on that. But I think it's definitely worth the effort. You know, it's a challenge. Our greatest crop, you know, our commercial crop-wise, I suppose, is seeds. We do a lot of seed production for commercial contracts. We retail seeds right off of our website as well, some small batch things. But our largest, you know, production is probably seed. This is kind of my 9-to-5 gig. We won't talk about this too much. I cold press oil from seeds, and then we craft this oil into a number of different herbal products and things with the herbs from our farm, as well as things I gather from the woods across the street. But that's a different topic, and that's actually a topic I'm speaking at later today, sometime in the afternoon in Classroom A. It's probably on your schedule. We'll get more in depth on that. I'm not allowed to talk about that right now. Here's some of the stuff that, these are the companies that I've worked with in the last 2 years commercially for seed production. Baker Creek Heirloom Seed Company probably being the most well-known out of all of them. That's our largest contract. We produce quite a bit of seed for these guys. We're very involved in a lot of the things that happen with their company. We organize a large seed swap for them at their expo in Santa Rosa every year. It's really been a blessing being able to work with those guys. Andy's Heirloom Seeds it's a Michigan company that we work with. When we first got hooked up with them, they actually were on Beaver Island. There was a seed company on an island, and I thought that was pretty groovy. And they've since moved into a more reasonable place to grow seeds. But they're still groovy, and I still work with them. Go ahead. Michigan. Oh, I'm from Michigan. I guess that helps. And Rare Vegetable Seed Consortium is actually another Michigan-based organization where we grow unique and unusual species from all over the world, some pretty wild stuff. 2 seeds in a pod we just started working with this year. They are from West Virginia, and the Experimental Farm Network is in New Jersey. And we've grown a lot of peanuts and things for those guys, which is fun because a lot of my friends don't realize that you can grow peanuts in Michigan, and you totally can, and they're absolutely beautiful plants. If you've never grown peanuts before, I highly recommend it because they're fascinating. I'm fascinated by the plants that we grow. I think it's important to develop a relationship with all of the plants that you grow, particularly your food plants or the plants that you're growing for food for other people. It's crucial, and we've gotten to a place in our world where we're so busy worrying about production numbers that sometimes we don't necessarily develop these relationships. And I think that we're doing everybody a disservice for that. And I will talk about that more. I may get philosophical because I cannot help myself. I think it's important. You can't be out in the dirt all day and not get philosophical. You guys know what I mean. I do a lot of work with seed libraries. This is kind of the side gig. It's a labor of love because this work doesn't pay, but I am a firm believer of locally adapted community seed sources. And through that, we've created a number of seed libraries. Are you guys familiar with what a seed library is? I don't see a lot. Oh, I see no's. Okay, so a seed library, well, it's very much like a library, but for seeds, right? We actually house a lot of them in public libraries because people are kind of in that mental format when they get to these places. We're even using card catalogs in a lot of these places, which is cool. You want to see a librarian get excited, man. You use them a reason to use that card catalog again. Woo, they get, I don't know what happened to Dewey Decimal, but they're not using them really. But anyway, so people can come in and they can check out the seeds. It's free. It's a free service. They can take these seeds home to their houses or whatever and grow the seeds and enjoy the delicious produce. And then in the fall they harvest their seeds and they bring them back. Just like you bring back your book when you're done reading it, you bring back your seeds at the end of the season. It has been a challenge. So these are dots that each represent seed libraries, and it's not really up to date. In full disclosure, my wife does all of the computer related things on our farm because that's not my skill set, as we learned today. So this is not up to date. Not up to date at all. As of today, there are 62 seed libraries in the state of Michigan, which is impressive. To put that in perspective, nationwide there's somewhere between 500 to 600. 62 of them are in Michigan. You guys got to do the math. I'm not a mathematician either, but it is impressive. Here in the great state of Indiana, there are 12. So there's some work to be done here, most certainly. But it's something I certainly believe in, and we spend a lot of our time working on it. Really what it comes down to is education. I spend a great majority of my time educating people on how to save seeds, which is a funny thing when you think about it. People like me should not exist. Just a couple generations ago, absolutely everybody was a seed saver. You had to be if you wanted to grow food, right? And it's one of those skill sets that we've just handed away in the name of convenience. People are very busy chasing Federal Reserve notes and they apparently don't have time to save their seeds. So it's given me a gig teaching people how to reclaim these ancient skills. I talk to a lot of farmers. I assume that most of you guys are farmers. We're at a farm conference, right? How many of you guys are actively farming food for people? Just a few. All right. Gosh, I expected more. I talk to farmers a lot. I've got some interesting statistics on the amount of farmers that I've talked to and how many of them are saving seeds. And it's startling to see that number is very low. Very low. Some farmers in particular, I'm going to get into that in a minute, but it almost enrages me. I'm enraged. This is me enraged. This is my enraged face. Here's my kids. They have nothing to do with the talk. They're just adorable. Look at them. Oh my gosh. This is Anakin and this is Elijah. They get their cutes from their mother. She's an adorable lady, and that is passed down to this generation. Now I'll tell you a little bit about myself so we can all get on the same page here. I was raised by my grandmother. My grandmother, her mother, my great-grandmother, she lived through the Depression, right? And because of that, my grandmother learned the importance of being prepared. So in the little apartment that my grandma and I lived in, an entire closet of that space was dedicated to food storage, right? An entire closet of this little apartment. And so my grandma was fascinated with modern conveniences as well. Packaged foods mostly. The convenience of processed packaged foods. Macs and cheese and cans of things and all this sort of stuff, right? And she was also fascinated with the microwave. Everything went in the microwave at my house. Everything. So I grew up eating a ton of packaged processed food that was prepared for me in a microwave. I'm all right. It's harmless. Look at me. I'm totally fine. But to get to the point in my life now where I grow a majority of the food that my family consumes was a huge 180 in the way that I had to do things. And what I've learned, and the thing that I'm going to come back to talk to about, and the reason that I'm mentioning it now, is that when we change the way we think about one thing in our life, we realize that we actually have to change the way that we think about a lot of things in our life. Everything is connected like a big web, right? And to change one thing, I had to change a lot of things. And it was very challenging to change my perspective on the world to make better choices. And as farmers and growers, when we have to change our mindsets to become seed savers, we actually have to change the way that we think about a lot of different things. And we're going to talk about those. So we're going to talk about the challenges and the benefits versus the benefits of saving your seeds. Now I want to focus the most on the benefits because everybody likes to end on a positive note. I want you guys pumped up, storming out of here, save our seeds. But we have to talk about the challenges as well. because that is obviously the barrier that we all have to cross to become seed savers in our gardens and farms and community gardens and whatever it is that you guys are doing, even in your home plots. There are plenty of challenges. So I went and spoke with a number of different farmers, of farms from all different sizes, and I wanted to talk to them about whether or not they save seeds on their farms. Because of what I do for work, that's a question I have to ask all the time. Do you guys save your seeds? And if not, why not? Now, I try to keep my information small scale, small farms. I believe this is called the Small Farm Conference. So I try to keep it small. But let's talk about big farms just for a quick second, right? Now, to drive from where I'm at in central Michigan to where we're at, central Indiana, right? I had to drive by what is going to be the future home of many, many millions of acres of cornfields and many, many millions of acres of soybean fields, right? You guys are familiar with that. You guys live around here, man. That's all that you see. And we're not going to get into food scarcity and the potential of each empty field that we turn into a soybean and when it could actually be turned into food. We won't talk about that. That's a different topic. But let's talk about these soybean farmers in particular. Is anybody here a soybean farmer? Okay. Oh, shit. No, this is good. This is a good conversation for us to have because a majority of the soybean farmers that I speak with grow very large plots of soybeans, right? And when I ask them if any of them are saving the seeds from their soybean crops, the percentage that say yes is 0. 0% of the soybean farmers that I speak with are saving their seeds. And to me, that is one of the most frustrating things that we can deal with because they have the entire infrastructure on their farm to harvest, clean, process, and store soybeans, which are seeds, right? That's what they do. That's their final product. You know what I mean? So for them, the list of challenges is, I think, much shorter, and it's one of the things that I don't understand about modern agriculture. But let's move along. Most of the farms that I spoke with were anywhere from 1.5 acre to 5 acres in size. I tried to keep it small farms, right? Now these small farms, we wanted to know how many people they were feeding, which is incredibly difficult to figure that out. But I meant more than just like a head of broccoli. I mean actively providing large portions of food to a family. And they were giving me numbers anywhere from about 350 people to 1,000 people per season. Now the biggest numbers that I have here come from a small 5-acre organic farm in central Michigan. They have the largest impact on their community, it seems, because of the scale of what they're doing, where they believe that they're feeding actively 1,000 people in their community, which is serious. The impact of farms is incredible. You know, farmers and teachers, I think, are like the 2 most important professions in the world, really, if you think about it. Without farmers and teachers, we'd just be a bunch of like hungry, dumb people. And they don't get the credit that they deserve, you know what I mean, for the impact that they have on their society. When you think about actively feeding 1,000 families, that's huge. And they were able to reach these families in a number of ways. Most of them had a CSA program. I assume you're all familiar with what a CSA is? Community Supported Agriculture. I don't see any nods. I'll tell you what it is. Okay, so in the most basic sense, people will sign up like a subscription service, right? And they'll pay generally before the season starts, kind of a down payment on owning a little bit of that farm, right? And then every month they get a basket of produce equivalent to the amount of money that they spend, you know? So you spend a couple $100, you get a half a bushel every week or every month or however the scale is. I used to work with a grass-fed beef CSA. And once a month they would deliver a box of beef to everybody's house. I mean, you want to see some happy people, you show up at their house with a box of beef. Woo, boy. A lot of these folks were also feeding people via farmers markets. That seems to be a pretty common thing. There's a lot of farmers markets up by me. I assume it's similar down here. The town that I'm closest to is called Midland, which most people know because it's the home of Dow Chemical. You guys heard of that, right? But it also has a thriving farmers market right in the shadow of this chemical factory. So it's ironic as all get out here. But their farmers market at peak season has over 100 vendors, right? 10,000 people will come through there shopping on a Saturday. It is outrageous. You know what I mean? It's totally like a circus. It's a great opportunity to get some food out to the people. And a lot of folks are using farm stands. You know, the honor system farm stands, or they had wholesale accounts with restaurants, or the local co-op, they had that. Some of these farms were very busy folks, and they had combinations of all of these different ways that they were getting the food out to people. So I thought this was a good cross-section of small farms to get some information on. So I asked them about how many of these people, how many of these farms were saving seeds actively on their farms. And you know how many were? 0. Somebody said it. And that's the answer. Literally 0, right? And I said, well, first I yelled and stormed about. But then, when I regained my composure, I said, why are you guys not saving your seeds? And these are the list of challenges that people told me. So let's go through them. Growing hybrids. Many of the farms that I spoke with grow hybrids, which I thought was ironic because when you go to their table at the farmer's market, they have signs all over their tomatoes that say heirloom right on them. But then when I ask them about it later, they tell me they're growing hybrids. So I'm not really sure what's going on with that. But many farms grew hybrids. Many said, I just don't have time for it, Ben. You know, ain't nobody got time for that. Labor requirements. You know what I mean? We're all on a budget. I can't take my time to do this work, and I can't pay somebody else to do it. It's simply not a production priority. Not a production priority. And this is the most interesting of all the phrases, and I'm going to break this one down quite a bit in a couple of slides here because, you know, priority, when you think about it, is really a matter of opinion. We assign priority to things. And for all these farms, saving seeds was not a production priority. That's interesting. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But first, let's talk about growing hybrids. This was the #1 challenge that I faced, was people growing hybrids. You know, and let's go back to what I was saying about changing the way that we think about things. And this is the #1 example of when we need to change the way that we think about things. Around 1900, and you guys are probably, being farmers, familiar with the history of hybridization of our fruits and vegetables. And around 1900, when hybridization became the thing to do, right? The people that convinced the farmers to do this, that showed them the benefits of growing hybrids, were the exact same people selling the hybrid seeds. Well, man, if I was selling you something, I'd tell you all sorts of good stuff about it, wouldn't I? You always got to look out when the person convincing you is the same person selling you at the end of the day, right? And these hybrid vegetables, they were great for a number of reasons. I mean, hybrid vigor is important. Even production is important. You know, we want productive plants. There was a number of great reasons that they were able to lay out to these folks why we should grow some hybrids. What they didn't happen to mention, which wasn't a big part of the sales pitch, is once you start to grow these hybrids, you are now forever stuck having to buy those seeds from me. Right? Do you guys understand why it's difficult to save seeds from hybrid vegetables? Is that something? I'll give you a quick breakdown on that. I ask these questions expecting to see nods, and I don't see them, so I'm just going to keep explaining stuff. So now an open pollinated variety, which is the opposite of a hybrid, an open pollinated variety is the way that nature does it. And the simplest way to understand that is when left to pollinate openly with the plants around it, it will produce seeds that grow true to the maternal plant. Right? Example, I grow Amish paste tomatoes. If I save the seeds from my Amish paste tomatoes and grow them again next year, I get Amish paste tomatoes. I know what to expect. Now, hybrids are what they call F1s, first generations, right? So you take two plants of the same species, you cross them together, and what you get is the hybrid, that first generation hybrid, right? And they do that for a number of different reasons, and we're not going to debate that right now. But you save the seeds from this first generation hybrid, and you plant them again the next year, you get the second generation, right? The F2, you guys are following along with this, right? Okay, in that second generation is every potential genetic expression that you could have gotten from the first initial cross. To say that simpler, you don't really know what those seeds are going to produce. They could be like the maternal plant, they could be like the paternal plant, they could be like from a grandfather plant, they could be similar, you don't know. And when you're dealing with a market farm or a CSA, when you're growing your vegetables as your livelihood, it's very difficult to take those challenges of not knowing exactly what your fruits are going to produce, right? So nobody wanted to save the seeds from the hybrids, and we're forced to continue to buy seeds year after year from the seed supplier, who was sitting back on an island somewhere smoking cigars with that evil laugh thinking, I got them all. Because when you own the seeds, you own the people. We see that in more modern forms today. But I'm not allowed to talk about that either. So these benefits of growing the hybrids, these sales pitch things, were things like disease resistance, right? Even predictable production, high producing, plants, vigorous plants, right? These were the things which is good. Those are all good things, certainly. But if we stopped and looked at the old varieties that people grew, we would realize that we already had those accessible to us. In the picture, here's a cucumber called Poinsett 76. Right? It was released in 1976. It's an improvement upon the original Poinsett cucumber. Right? This is not an heirloom by any means, but it is an open pollinated variety. And this is the most vigorous, wonderful cucumber that you'll ever grow. Now, the main cucumber market, commercial market, is mostly hybrids. Right? Because people need disease resistance. They need the ability to predict the production. They need to know when and how to pick these things, right? All of those traits you can find in this open pollinated cucumber that you can also save the seeds from right on your own farm. When people think of the opposite of hybrids, when they think about heirlooms, they always tend to think about tomatoes. You know what I mean? And those tomatoes don't keep for nothing, right? You pick that tomato, boy, you better like carry it like a baby in your house and eat it right away. You can't take those things to market. They're not going to keep, all right? That's okay. I understand that. But there's more than just heirlooms out there if we're trying to get away from hybrids. The simple open pollinated varieties which come true, new open pollinated varieties are being bred every year to deal with all of the problems that we have with our heirlooms. Blight resistance in our tomatoes, even production, storability, all of those things can be found in new open pollinated varieties that you guys can grow and save the seeds from right on your farms year after year. I don't have the time, Ben. I don't have the time and labor to save these seeds. It's just not possible. Again, we just have to change the way that we think about things. Now, farmers are some of the most ingenious folks, hardworking folks that there are, right? You guys have gone from like simple, basic farming to the most elaborate, technologically advanced farms. Now we're scaling it back to small farms again, right? So many of these skills have been translated from generation to generation, passed down, adapted. Just like the plants adapt, the farmers adapt for all of our changing conditions. But the one skill that has never been passed down, suddenly in the last couple generations just dropped to the wayside, is saving seeds. Again, I mentioned, people like me should not exist. Should not be somebody coming around talking to you about saving seeds. As farmers, obviously, you have first access to these seeds, and you should have the skill set to be saving these seeds. And then you tell me that you don't because you don't have the time and labor for it. And I think it's just changing the way that we think about things. When we think about how easy it can be to save these seeds. Now in this picture right here, this is my buddy Eric. He owns the Ann Arbor Seed Company. It's a small little seed company in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I like to plug him because I think he does good work. He's one of the few seed companies that I work with that actually grows 100% of the seed that they sell, which you don't get a lot of that. Anyways, he's doing a demonstration from some kids here. And do you see this little blob of stuff? It's tomato seeds. Right? Now tomato seeds are one of the more labor intensive seeds to save because you have to ferment them, which means let them rot essentially in these buckets for a couple of days. Incredibly simple to save. Probably a grand total of about an hour and a half of work over a week's time. And he has right here literally millions of tomato seeds. Enough tomato seeds on here to give everybody in this room all the tomato seeds they need for all of their crops next year. Right there. Hour and a half of his time and labor. Right? I know the farmers are busy people, but if we can just tweak the way that we think about the way we spend our time, we'll realize that we have access to all of the wonders of the universe right at our fingertips. So here's some statistics to prove my point. Now, out of all these farms that I talked to, some of them grew beans, right? And they grew anywhere from 2,500 to 3,000 bean plants. Mostly bush plants, because that's what people like. I'm more of a pole guy, but that's a different conversation anyways. Now, to be able to produce that, somewhere between 1 to 2 pounds of seed. Now, there's some variables here, as anybody that grows beans knows. Beans come in different sizes, different varieties have different seed sets per pod. There's definitely some variabilities here, so we got a little bit of a leeway in our talk. So 1 to 2 pounds of seed will produce that many plants. In order to get 1 to 2 pounds of seeds, it's about a 15-foot row, or on average around 2.5% of your total crop, when left to go to seed, will produce enough seeds to reproduce that entire crop. 2.5%, right? Now with soybeans, if you've ever grown them, they only produce a couple of beans per pod, right? So that throws our numbers off a little bit. With soybeans, it's approximately 4%. 4%. And that scales from your backyard garden to 1,000,000 acres. 4%. If you leave 4% of your beans to go to seed, they will produce enough seed to reproduce that entire crop again the next year. How about tomatoes? Now the farmers I talked with did anywhere from 100 to 600 plants, right? So there's a lot of variability in how many seeds you're going to get out of a tomato, right? Some may only have 50, some real seedy guys will have up to 300, right? But let's err on the side of caution and say that my tomatoes only have 50 seeds in them, and I need to make 600 plants. I only need to save the seeds from 12 tomatoes. 12. 12 tomatoes. I'll say that one more time. 12 tomatoes. Remember my buddy Eric? This is a lot more than 12 tomatoes. 12 tomatoes. Peppers. Let's keep going. Farms I talked to grew anywhere from 100 to 350 plants. You know, peppers, again, a lot of variation in the seeds, anywhere from 50 to 250. But let's say my variety only had 50 seeds and I needed 350 plants. I only need to save the seeds from 7 peppers. 7. I think we could all do that. You guys ever save pepper seeds? It barely takes any effort at all. How about melons? Now, the farmers that I talked to grew anywhere from 20 to 200 plants. Now, the 200 plant farmer was the 5-acre organic farm. And what I thought was the most interesting about the lady growing the 200 melon plants is when I spoke to her about what varieties that she was growing two different melons. One of them being a cantaloupe and one of them being a watermelon. Couldn't be any more perfect because those are different species and they won't even cross-pollinate. So she could grow all of those melons and not even worry about cross-pollinating her seeds. Incredible. And there's anywhere from 100 to 300 seeds in a melon fruit, right? So again, 100 seeds, 200 plants. How many melons? Two, right? And these aren't like genetically inferior melons. These are melons that sat in the field a little too long and got a soft spot. These are melons that I dropped on the way to the market that I just cannot sell. There's nothing wrong with these melons, but they're filled with wonderful seeds, right? 2 melons will produce enough seeds for 200 plants. Now, 200 plants was kind of an exception. Most of the farmers that I spoke with did not say numbers that large. But even in the case of that small farm, she could have produced all the seeds she needed, right? Man, interesting, isn't it? Take a picture of this if you haven't written that down yet. Production priorities. Now, this is a picture of some lady I stole off the internet, but she's adorable. And look at all of her seed cleaning screens. She's serious about her work. Production priorities. So, again, now priority is a matter of opinion. Some priorities are forced upon us by nature. Some priorities are forced upon us by the bottom line. Obviously, I understand that we just can't choose all of our priorities, but we kind of do at the same time. You know what I mean? I got a buddy. You guys ever heard? So he's a real no-till guy. You guys, anybody doing that no-till thing? Holy smokes, this guy's a flipping diehard with this no-till. He comes over to my place. He even sees my tiller, man. I'm in for a lecture. It's over, right? I try to hide it when I know he's coming over. I'm like, Bob's coming, hide the tiller. Anyways, he's a diehard. He's got a broad fork, right? You guys know the broad fork? Okay. This guy's field that he grows. I tried no-till. I have. And I've got to give us some credit. I'm not trying to bad talk it by any means, okay? So I grew some peas last year. And at Bob's insistence, I had to do some no-till. So I grew 2 rows of peas. Each of them was 100 foot. The one row I grew like I normally would. I till in the chicken crap, you know, we do the whole thing. It's all good to go. The other one, man, no-till. We poked those seeds right into the ground, just left it alone, just like that. And I tell you what, come later, you would never know which row was which I think gives a lot of credit to no-till. You know what I mean? I put no effort into it at all, and I got the same production out of that row than the one I put all the work into. So Bob does have a point. Now, Bob's field is a pretty good size. Yeah, I bet maybe as big as this room. It's hard to say, you know what I mean? If it was sunnier out, maybe I'd be able to tell. But anyways, let's just say. Anyways, dude broad forks his field, right? He gets out there, man. He's a younger, more in shape guy than I am. And he gets right out there, boom, you know, you do that thing. It's labor. Has anybody done the broad fork? You work, man. It's work. And he does a very large area. He earns it, right? Okay. And I said, Bob, man, what are you doing with your time? I believe in it, Ben, and it works. It works, and I believe in it. It's a priority. Now, let's think about that. This guy believes it's enough of a priority not to till that he will broad fork an area as big as this room. But when I ask him about saving seeds, oh, I don't know, Ben. I don't know if I have time for that. Interesting to think about. So I'm not going to say anything bad about no-till because obviously it works, but it's all a matter of priorities. It's all about changing the way that we think about things. When we understand the value that saving our seeds can bring to our farms, then we can quickly understand that it is obviously a priority that all of us take the time to incorporate that into our workday. So let's talk about those benefits. Marketability, obviously, right? At the end of the day, you got to pay the bills. You know, I like to feel good about myself and stand on soapboxes and tell people what I think about things. But at the end of the day, man, you got to pay the bills. And nobody wants to hear anything unless they know they can make some money off of it. Because that's what we're in the business for, right? Local adaptation, obviously, is important. We'll talk about that quite a bit. And truly sustainable farming. Truly sustainable farming. And I apologize for even using the word sustainable. And we'll talk about why I shouldn't use that word in a little bit. But, you know, I deal with a lot of sustainable agricultural programs. And last year when I was here at the trade show, there's a lot of stuff at the trade show that wasn't set up this year because I was hoping to grab some things and bring them in here for visual aids, and nobody's set up. But there's a whole organization that's working on sustainable agriculture, and they had a sweet handout. It's got pretty much the bullet points of what sustainable agriculture means and how to incorporate it into your farm. You know what I mean? It may have been a Purdue thing. I should watch what I say because they're recording me. I love Purdue. But what I noticed on these handouts is they're missing some of the most crucial stuff if we wanted to consider sustainable agriculture. The most important one being seeds. Nobody's even talking about seeds. After I'm done talking, there's going to be somebody else in this room doing a presentation about saving seeds, and I'm flipping stoked about it because it is one of the very few times that I've even seen seeds as a topic of conversation at a conference unless I'm the one talking about it. And I'm at conferences all over the country talking to people all the time, and it is so rare to see people talking about seeds. It's so great to see that that conversation is continuing. I'm absolutely stoked about it because somehow, again, that skill set has not translated into modern farming, and I just can't even get my head around it. So when you buy seeds, which I guess if you guys aren't saving seeds, you're all buying them, right? These are the top 10 seed companies, not by name because I'm not allowed to do that, but by location. The top 10 largest selling seed companies, right here. Maine, Missouri, New York, Vermont, Kentucky, Oregon, Arizona, California, Washington, Texas. You know what I don't see on here? Indiana. I don't see it. I don't see any Midwestern states, right? Somebody said that. Where's Indiana? Crazy. Now, let's think about it even more so, right? Now, I won't say any of the names, but let's talk about Missouri. Missouri is home to my largest seed contract company. If you guys have been paying attention, you know who I'm talking about. When I buy the seeds from that company, they're being shipped to me from Missouri, but only about maybe 10% of those seeds are actually being grown in Missouri. They're being grown all over the place, all over the country, actually from all around the world, right? So without transparency and disclosure, you have no idea where your seeds are even coming from. Right? Now, a lot of small-time, up-and-coming seed companies are really trying to fill in those gaps. To plug another one of my friends, Nature and Nurture Seed Company in Michigan grows a great majority of the seeds that they sell, and everything in their catalog that they don't grow, it specifically says who grows it and where they grow it and how to get a hold of them. Now, that's cool, because when you buy these seed companies' seeds, you don't know where they come from. And I didn't realize until I got actively involved in the commercial seed industry, a great percentage of the seeds that are sold here in the States are not grown in America. Not even close. I won't mention any other countries like China or India, but we can guess where a lot of these seeds may be coming from. Yes, let's talk about that again. You guys heard of climate change? Is that something you guys have in Indiana? Okay. What's that? Yeah, I know. I watched, we were being recorded. So, marketability. Again, the bottom line, right? At the end of the day, marketability. We got to make a buck off of it. Now, this is a picture of a pepper called Sugar Rush Peach. Have you heard of it? If not, write it down. Because I'm telling you what, this is going to be the next big thing, man. This is going to be the pepper that everybody wants. Sugar Rush Peach, right? It's wonderful. Now, the flesh of the pepper is sweet and smoky. The inside of the pepper where the seeds are at, burn your face off hot. What a wild combination of stuff, right? Now, this pepper comes from a guy named Chris Fowler. Chris Fowler is a guy, and he's in Wales, and he's a pepper breeder, right? That's what he does with his time, is breed peppers. We're buddies. I get to follow him on Facebook. He is one of the most fast. He's really into UFOs, you know, so you got to kind of filter through his stuff. But the pepper work that he does is absolutely fascinating. He's in greenhouses right now, man, crossing peppers. This guy, all sorts of peppers too. Wild peppers. I mean, he's not just dealing with the main 5 species that will be growing. He's dealing with all sorts of stuff, you know. Absolutely fascinating guy. This is his livelihood, right? This is his greatest commercial success, the Sugar Rush Peach. He found it by accident in his field. No idea how it happened. He spends so much of his time intentionally crossing peppers, trying to come out with the next big thing, and this is the pepper that he got, right? This is the $1 million deal. No idea how it even happened. Pure accident. Now, this is the kind of plant breeding that every single one of us can do, right? no skill set, no, you don't even barely need to understand how pepper flowers work, and we could be producing this thing, right? The marketability of that is huge. Now I got a guy, one of the farmers that I talked to, his farm was called like Berry Creek or Berry Patch Creek or something like that. He didn't grow any berries though. I assume that really must be the name of the creek by his farm. He was a pepper guy. That's what he did, was peppers. Peppers, peppers, peppers. His whole 16 feet of peppers, you know, it's 16-foot table, right? Selling peppers. All sorts of different stuff, sizes, shapes, and colors. You know, there's a lot of diversity in peppers, right? I says to him, I said, man, what are you saving any seeds from these peppers? Now on my farm, I grow the 5 different species of peppers because I find it's a lot easier to control cross-pollination in that case, right? This guy's got so much going on, I didn't know if that was possible. So did you save any of your pepper seeds? Oh, Ben, you're crazy, man. There's no way. Look at all the peppers I'm growing. There's no way I got time to bag these blossoms, do this work. I'm not doing it. It's not a production priority. I'm not doing it. Because if I did, they'd cross-pollinate, then I'd end up getting all these peppers of different sizes and shapes, and nobody would know what they were, all these different colors. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, what's your best-selling pepper? What's your #1 selling product? Oh, come over here, he says. I got these bags. There's these paper sacks, right? You know, they're goodie bags. It's all sorts of different stuff. All sorts of different peppers of different sizes and shapes and colors. Nobody even knows what they are, and I sell them for $5 a bag. Pause. Rewind that. Why aren't you saving any of your seeds? Because I'd have a bunch of different peppers of different sizes and shapes and colors, and nobody would even know what they are. What's your best-selling product? This bag of peppers of all different sizes and shapes and colors. Nobody even knows what they are. Maybe if we just change the way that we think about the things that we're doing, we could make our whole lives a lot easier. You know what I mean? It's an interesting way to think about things. Now I do a lot of work with seed libraries. I mentioned earlier, when you're saving and sharing seeds in a community environment, people like to know exactly what that seed is going to grow, certainly. Here in the States, we love to put labels on things and put them in little boxes, have everything in columns, and very organized. We like that. Now, how about nature? I don't think so. Nature's promiscuous, right? Nature loves to cross-pollinate things. Nature loves that kind of diversity. That's how nature ensures the success and survival of all of her species, right? So maybe if we thought that people aren't the smartest creatures on the planet, maybe nature is the smartest thing on this planet. And maybe if we could look to nature as a cue, as a leader, it would take us to places where we should have been at years ago. Did I get philosophical? I apologize. Here's some specifics on marketability. Local food from local seed. Now everybody wants to buy local food. Oh, it's local, right? Now, again, maybe it's just my opinion, but local food is only as local as the seed that it grows from. When the seed that grows your food comes from a different state, when the seed that grows your food comes from across the country, when the seed that grows your food comes from the other side of the planet, in my eyes, there's nothing local about the food that you're growing. Local food comes from local seed, which in some situations gives us the ability to charge higher prices, right? People want to buy local. People understand the value of supporting their local economies, right? There's definitely an upcharge for that. Now, every demographic's a little different in every community. You know, I go to a few different farmers markets. And in Midland, the one I mentioned, the home of Dow Chemical, you'll notice that the prices are higher on absolutely everything. If I drive a half an hour down the road to Saginaw, everything is cheaper, you know? Because it comes down to your demographic. And some demographics can't necessarily support the higher prices that people demand for their food. But with proper marketability, the understanding the value of the local food from local seed, you could definitely get more money for it. You also get the unique and diverse selection, like our buddy with the bag of peppers, right? He's already known for having the most diverse collection of peppers available. What if he just let nature do its own thing? Boy, you could have some cool stuff. Remember Chris Fowler's Sugar Rush Peach? We could all do that. Every single one of us could do that if we just chill out and let nature do its thing. Educational opportunities. People always want to learn, right? People will pay money to come to your farm to learn about how to save the seeds. They will pay money to come to your farm to do the work of harvesting your seeds. I see it happen all the time, right? People love to learn stuff. I teach herbal wellness classes a lot, right? And people want to come and, oh, I want to learn how to make an herbal salve, Ben. And they'll pay me money for me to stand in front of a room and show everybody how to make an herbal salve. And then when they're done, They buy salves from me and go home. Volunteer labor. Man. Okay, I got a buddy, his name's Chris Swear, right? Swear Farm in Remus, Michigan. Little tiny town, you'd never even know it was there, right? He grows garlic, that's his main thing. That's his main business is the garlic. I go out there to help him harvest garlic. The one year we pulled 2,100 pounds of garlic. And in my experience up to that point in my life, I had never seen so much garlic. What a day's worth of work that could be, right? Okay, so now Chris puts on a garlic harvest party. Right? So members of his CSA, members of the community, people interested in seeing how garlic works, people like me that just apparently have no other things to do with their time, all sorts of different people come from all around out to Chris's farm to harvest the garlic. Right? They got people pulling the garlic, they got people cleaning the garlic, they got people trimming it, they got people hanging it up in the rafters, right? All these people are doing this work, volunteers, so they can be a part of it. Meanwhile, Chris just driving his tractor around with the trailer on the back and putting the garlic on. He's like, yeah, right? That's all he did all day. Was drive his tractor around while everybody else harvested 2,100 pounds of garlic. Then we have lunch in the middle of the day. Potluck. Potluck. He didn't even feed us. Everybody brought their own food. We brought our own food to the farm. We did all the work. Just to say that we did it, it makes us feel good. A lot of people, it's good to get your hands in the dirt, right? What a clever guy. Now, if we could tweak our thinking a little bit in the direction that Chris Swear has been taking his farm, imagine the things that we could do. When we say our challenges are, production priorities or labor or whatever it is, look at that clever solution to all of those challenges, right? Amazing stuff. You sell 2,100 pounds of garlic, man, that's pretty much like his main income. Smart guy, smart guy. We could all be like Chris Swear if we tweak our thinking a little bit. Here's a fun sticker. Talking about marketing local seeds. This is from the Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance. You can buy these from the Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance. They're stickers. Slap them on your local produce so everybody knows that the produce that they're buying is from local seeds. Now, I like to give people all the credit in the world, but any of you that have sold things to other people realize that Joe, public consumer, needs a little nudging, needs a little education. They need some guidance, right? They need to be kind of told what to do. And when you can put these stickers on your produce, put these stickers on your products, people will say, oh, I see why this costs more. Added value, I understand it. Tell me more about local seeds. Start that conversation, right? You can buy rolls of these things, $10. I think you get 1,000 of them. Don't quote me on that, but they're pretty inexpensive. I don't know if localseed.rocks is a real website. Somebody should Google it while I'm talking, but that's a cool website. If it's not, I'm going to buy it. Let's talk about local adaptation. So we have confirmed that climate change does exist in Indiana. Now we won't debate what causes it. It's people. It's people. But let's just say that it exists. I'd cover the microphone because I don't know how everybody else feels about that. With changes in our climate, changes in our weather pattern, changes in our growing seasons, also come changes in our weed and pest pressures, right? We see it. We're out in the fields every day. Scientists can debate, politicians can debate. Those guys, I don't even know how well they know the things, but the people in the field, we know what's happening. And we realize that if we are not properly prepared, well, we may be in trouble. It's certainly a possibility. You guys ever heard of Svalbard? The Doomsday Vault? That thing you guys are familiar with up in Norway? They take all the seeds from all the places in the world and they stash them up there in case there's a disaster. We have access to all the world's seeds, right? Okay, I'll tell you a couple things about Svalbard. First off, if there was a worldwide disaster, it does make us feel good knowing that those seeds are there. I feel very comforted and safe. But man, those seeds aren't for us. We got to face that. Those seeds are already spoken for. They're already owned by governments and corporations and nonprofits. You know what I mean? My buddy Lee from the Seed Savers, they just took 35,000 species up there to have them backed up. You know what I mean? But those aren't us. Those aren't for us. Joe Public, we will see none of those seeds. If there was a worldwide disaster, we do not benefit from that at all. 2, we don't want those seeds, right? So Svalbard's 10 years old. It's frozen. It's under a mountain, right? That's why they have it there, so it's frozen. And you can freeze seeds, and they'll last a very long time. I got some seeds from a kid down in Kentucky. They were in his grandma's freezer for 50 years, these tomato seeds, and I got 70% germination on them, right? So, I mean, these seeds are fine, these frozen seeds, certainly. Now, Svalbard's 10 years old. When they built Svalbard, they brought seeds from other seed banks from all around the place. Some that were 10 years old, some that were 20 years old, some that were 30 years old. Math. Some of the seeds in the Doomsday Vault are 40 years old, frozen in time for 40 years. Sure, they'll germinate. Sure, they'll grow. But the climate from 40 years ago is a little bit different than the world that we live in now. And if there was a worldwide disaster and those were the only seeds that we had to rely upon, I would prefer seeds properly acclimated and adapted to the world that we live in, not seeds from 40 years ago. The greatest seed bank in the world is the one that's in the ground. When we actively plant and save our seeds, they continue to adapt and change to the changes in the climate that we have now, not 40 years ago. If we want to be prepared to feed ourselves and our family and our communities, the absolute best thing that we can do is actively save the seeds from our farms and not to rely upon some other entity to provide them for us. We can historically look since the 1900s, when they started pushing hybrids, to now the genetically modified patented seeds that we have to sign contracts for, that when we pass the control of the seeds off to other people, what do we have? Dependence. Farmers are too independent for that sort of trickery. Man, well, that's a terrible picture. What the heck? Okay, I got to replace that slide. Every time I see this thing, that's a terrible picture. This is a picture. The story's so good, I'm going to continue to use it. What we're looking at here, see these things? God, wow, it's tobacco hanging upside down to cure on a building next to a greenhouse. All right? This is an important story, so I kept the slide. I'm going to tell the story just as an example. So this is from the 7th generation building in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. And in Mount Pleasant, Michigan is the home to the Chippewa Ojibwe people, right? That's where they live. And when they created the 7th generation building, which is a cultural center where you can learn all about indigenous traditions, right? They make birch bark canoes, they have eagle feather ceremonies, wonderful place. I work with their Three Sisters Garden. That's my connection to the place, all right? Anyways, when they built the place 35 years ago, they said we have to have the 4 sacred herbs of our people that we have to grow here. One of them being tobacco, right? So they got some burley tobacco seed from a guy down in Kentucky, and they brought it up to central Michigan and they planted it. And how could you imagine the burley tobacco seed from Kentucky would do in central Michigan? Terrible! It was terrible! Most of it didn't even grow. It was pathetic. Pathetic. But some of those sad little plants made flowers. So they saved the seeds from those plants and they tried it again the next year. Maybe a little bit of an improvement, but still mostly pathetic, you know? They saved the seeds from the strongest plants. They planted them again the next year. Then they saved the seeds from the strongest plants. They planted them again the next year. Then they saved the seeds from the strongest plants and they planted them again the next year. And then they saved the seeds from the strongest plants and they planted them again the next year. You dig where I'm going? Fast forward 35 years, these guys are growing tobacco plants bigger than me. It's primo stuff. This plant could barely survive, and now it thrives. From the simple act of seed saving. Selecting seeds from the strongest plants continued to give them stronger and stronger acclimated plants year after year. And this is something that all of us can reproduce, not just with tobacco, but with every crop that we grow on our farms. We have the ability to do this. When you save the seeds from your plants, in essence, you've become a plant breeder. In reality, you've become the most important person on the planet. Not necessarily, okay. And let's talk about that. The question was, if you didn't hear it, this only works if we start with an open pollinated variety as opposed to a hybrid. Because remember, when we grow those hybrids, the next year we get tons of variability and we don't really know what's going to happen, which can be daunting to some people. If you're like me, it's the most exciting thing. The F2 is literally the most exciting thing because it is every expression of genetics possible. This is where all new plants come from, right? This is how nature does it, right? And she's a pro. So we'll talk about landrace farming because this comes into play with that. Now, a definition of a landrace is a domesticated, locally adapted, traditional variety of a species of plant that is developed over time through adaptation to its natural and cultural environment. Did you guys get all that? I got to speak fast. I've only got a few minutes now. Domesticated, locally adapted, traditional variety of... Traditional being the key word for me. Now, when you look at the way that people grew food on this continent, thousands of years before some people decided to improve upon it, there was incredible diversity in all of their crops. right? I read the book Buffalo Bird Woman's Garden. I highly recommend it. It's an indigenous lady from the Dakotas, and she wrote down pretty much everything she remembered about her village's agriculture before she passed away. It is a treasure trove of information. And one of the things that really stuck with me is although they kept their corn very well separated because they used the different colors of corn for different religious ceremonies, and they understood how cross-pollination worked, and they kept that very segregated. But aside from that, everything else went. They didn't have names for the squash or anything. They grew all sorts of different varieties of squash together, just picked their favorite ones to save the seeds from every year. Right? Incredible variations. I've got some, well, they call it Cherokee Trail of Tears, the black bean, which I only like that name because it forces us to have that conversation about the Trail of Tears and things that our government has done to people, and that's an important conversation to have. But in reality, that bean's called Gunaga'i, which is Cherokee for black. It was the black bean of the Cherokee people. The Cherokee Trail of Tears name was given to that bean by a white dude in the 70s that thought it would make it marketable, and that's important to recognize that. You know what I mean? Gunaga'i. But when you grow the true Gunaga'i bean that I got from a Cherokee fellow, it's not even all just black. There's browns and reds, incredible diversity in this landrace of bean. You know what I mean? So, here's another example. A traditional food crop with fabulous genetic biodiversity, which tends to produce stable yields under changing growing conditions. Produce stable yields under changing growing conditions. No matter what Mother Nature throws at you, Mother Nature's already prepared these plants for it. Right? When we're market farmers and we're growing for profit, we understand the significance of these things, right? We need stable yields. I need production no matter what the weather happens. Landrace will get us there. The easiest way to develop a landrace, make some hybrids, right? Here's the Anasazi squash. Squash that we got from some fellows that claim they got it out of a clay pot. This to George Hottie was his name. He was from Michigan, real eccentric fellow. But these squash are interesting to me because of the incredible diversity that you can see. The different shapes and colorations. A true landrace. Whatever Mother Nature throws at me, man, I'm producing the biggest maximas you have ever seen. They're awesome and beautiful. How about this? These are mochadas. There's a guy named Joseph Lofthouse from Utah. And Joseph Lofthouse is kind of my hero. If I wasn't married, I'll tell you what. This guy is something else. He has decided to create his own modern landraces by hybridizing everything. So he gets all the mochadas, butternut type squash, that species of squash is what he's done here. Put them all together and just let them grow. Mingle naturally as the bees would do it, right? And then from that, he is selected for the traits that he needs in his garden, for the plants to perform best the way that he treats them. He doesn't water them, he doesn't do anything with these things. Survival of the fittest, right? Then he selects from that, whatever the shape and color that he likes, whatever performs the best, whatever's the size of fruit that he enjoys, he selects for that. Then he takes it to his buddies that are chefs at restaurants, and they make the second round of selection. Now we're talking. This is how you breed plants, right? So you give it to the chefs. They cut them open, they taste them. They like what's the firmest flesh, or what's the softest, or whatever the flavor is, that dark orange color, whatever it is. So now we're selecting for its ability to perform in the field and its ability to be delicious in the kitchen. Because that's where all the food ends up anyways, right? Absolutely amazing stuff this guy's doing. Letting nature do its own thing. Here's some melons that he's developed. Now melons and squash are the pictures that I'm showing you being outcrossing plants. They're the easiest to hybridize. They're the easiest to create modern landraces with. Now, oh my gosh. Okay, Martin Longstreth is his name. He sent me these photos. He wanted to breed some plants, so he let some acorn squash do their thing, right? Let's let some acorn squash do their thing. And this is the next generation of the acorn squash. That's a beauty. Oh, that's cool. Kind of reminds me like a delicata a little bit. Look at this, you know. Came up with some interesting. Now these are only the selections of the ones that he enjoyed eating, right? Ready for the next slide? Look at that. Look what he did. Look at this beautiful stuff. You put these on your stinking table at the market, man, and you're going to sell out. These are gorgeous. Who's got squash that look like that? Nobody. Nobody. Interestingly enough, a friend of mine showed me some documentation from like the 1700s of some indigenous squash. That looked a lot like that you don't even see it anymore. You know what I mean? Isn't that beautiful? This is something that we have at our fingertips every time we're in our field. Every time the bees fly through our flowers, we have the ability to create every magical thing. Every expression of nature is right there if we learn to work with Mother Nature as opposed to over Mother Nature. Which brings us back to truly sustainable farming, right? It's all about inputs and outputs, right? One of the outputs on all of our farms is seeds. Outputs become inputs in sustainable farming, am I right? Boom. Seeds go back into the farm. Now, let's talk about this word though, because I apologize for using that. Because to sustain something is to keep it at the level that it's at, right? And I know that everybody here is very hardworking and dedicated to what they're doing, and I respect that. I respect all of you, and I think that, like I said, farmers are the most important people on the planet. But if our goal is to simply sustain where we're at right now, we're in trouble still, right? Sustainable agriculture is not what we want. Regenerative agriculture is the future. We need to regenerate. We need to grow above and beyond the place that we have found ourselves in. And that is the only way to be able to see the future. To continue to sustain ourselves at this level, we're just playing out the clock at that point. So I apologize for using that word. Yes?
So I guess at some level, I always had the assumption that somebody's overseeing these seeds. Some government agency must be approving these seeds that are at this point in our food chain. So that's not the case.
Oh, no, it's kind of the Wild West. I mean, so there is certainly some government oversight in a lot of things that happen in our seed world. You know what I mean? But a lot of the seeds that I deal with, some of the seeds I don't even know if the government knows they're in the country. Oh, God. We won't get into that. But a lot of the seeds that I deal with are traditional indigenous seeds, right? That have been here, that belong to the land and the people far before the government ever came and tried to claim rights to this place. You know what I mean?
Part of your sales pitch, you have to convince people that it's okay that you've done this to create this squash.
Well, I suppose you do.
Has that been approved? You know, I mean, there's a mentality that...
There's a mentality. That is exactly right. And it's changing the way that we think about things. When we have to constantly look to the government or Big Brother or whatever we want to call it for approval, for permits and licensing and all those sorts of things, our brains have been beat down into thinking that we need to seek permission for everything that we do. And I say no. No, that makes no sense. The seeds belong to the people. The people belong to the earth. We are a synergistic relationship that no government has control over. We don't need to ask for permission because the seeds belong to all of us. Seeds as a product. I got 1 minute, so we'll say this. I think selling seeds as a product on your farm is interesting. So people will sell sweet corn. For $4, you get 12 ears of corn. I don't know if that's the going rate around here. And if you're selling that decorative corn, it's even less. But let's look at it if we took it one step further. And this decorative corn, they're all indigenous flower corns, flint corns and things, right? My son, remember the picture of my son with the basket of corn? That's an Oneida white corn. He mills it himself on a little stone mill we rigged up, takes it to the farmer's market, and sells it for $10 a pound. It's about 2,000 seeds in a pound. So he could take 3 ears of corn and turn it into $10. And that's processed. What if we just sold it as seed, right? Here's some baby steps. Take a picture of this because I'm about out of time. If you're interested in getting seeds incorporated into your life and you're nervous about just taking the plunge, these are some easy ways to go about doing it. Just start with 1 or 2 self-pollinating varieties or isolated outcrossers and do it. Form a seed cooperative. We're always stronger together. If you save seeds from one thing, and you save seeds from one thing, and you save seeds from one thing, you save seeds from one thing, man, all of a sudden we got seeds for everybody. Just that easy, right? Thank you guys so much for having me. Here's my website. If you want to chat, I'm doing another talk at 4 o'clock or something in another room. And I got some books for sale if anybody's interested in books. You guys still read books? I got some. Again, thank you all very much.